Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairman, sir. And I'm indeed grateful to all the members, 23 of them who've been giving us in detail their views on the finance bill. So whilst I'll very briefly, to start with, give the broad features of the finance bill, I think it will be worth my while to respond to the observations made by various members. And through that, I think the response and my reply will be far more pointed towards the concerns, towards the issues raised by the honorable members. What exactly is in the finance bill has been viewed by all the members, have been analyzed, spoken, and therefore I will not get into the details other than broadly indicating that this finance bill does not envisage any increase in taxation, particularly in the direct tax, particularly in the income tax. It, of course, has some amendments towards achieving reduction in compliance aimed at ease of doing business. That's also the approach is similar when I'm dealing with customs and indirect taxes. I had announced in my budget speech that I shall take a very long-wound exercise in rationalizing customs duties and any other duty which has been brought in against dumping or any such over the decades, only because, I don't know if I should say, I was fairly astonished to see a large number of notifications on anti-dumping which have been announced during the decades, not one government, several governments, all of which did not have an end date, sunset date. And as a result, they just continue to be there, whether anyone is benefiting from it, whether actual injury is being caused, and so on. So we have announced in the budget that from 1st of April, there will be a stakeholders consultation. The whole thing will be available in the public domain. And if any such decades-old anti-dumping duty or any other notification as regards increasing or reducing duties is felt necessary, we shall take it up. But from now, we have decided, all of us have brought in a system whereby any such notification which is brought out after consultation should come with a deadline, so that, say, 2 years after the notification, March of that year, there should be a review. And if it is felt necessary, it can continue. If it's not felt necessary, it should end, rather than leaving it at a loose end. So we have built into the system, and that is also going to be subject to all people talking about it from April 1st. And that exercise hopefully will come to an end as of 31st August, post which, after a month of looking at reconciling the dates, from 1st October, we expect to roll out this new system, which is a streamlined system. It's not a system to undermine any one item of import or one item of anything that is causing injury. So largely, the emphasis on the direct taxes has been to reduce the compliance burden, not to increase the rates, and also to make sure ease of doing business is kept in mind. There was a suggestion from one of the members saying, why couldn't you get into the second stream of taxation which you have brought in the income tax without any exemptions and so on. I've got a detailed response to give, but the fact remains that that system is provided as an option rather than that is the only one, and removing the previous long existed system, because we need to grandfather also exemptions which have been provided, because many people do benefit from it. So the approach taken in this finance bill is essentially rationalize, bring in systems, simplify the process, compliances be easier, and so on, and ultimately bring the rates down. So not more than this would I say anything more, except because the agricultural infrastructure development cess has become a matter of concern. I think I said this in Lok Sabha, I wouldn't mind repeating it here. Before bringing in the cess, I had sat down personally to look at the items on which the customs duty can be brought down. And if the customs duty was to be brought down by 10 on any one particular item, the cess for the agricultural infrastructure that is being brought in now would not be to the extent of full extent of 10, but only to a part extent. So net, the incidence of the cess will be far lesser than what the importer was, say, paying through the basic customs duty which existed. If not remaining at the same level, it will be lesser. It will not be in any one case more than what they were paying earlier. So that is the clear justification as to why we brought in. And yes, I agree. I concede that cesses and surcharges don't get devolved. But the cess in this particular case is completely tailor-made for immediate emphasis to be given for improving the infrastructure in the farm gate or the farm yards and so on. So farm yards and all the APMCs are with the states, and therefore the cess money will have to go to them to improve the infrastructure there. So that is something which I want to draw the honourable members' attention. There are also extension of dates, whether it is for the startups, whether it is for affordable rental housing projects, whether it is for affordable houses. All those which existed prior to COVID are now being extended. During the COVID it got extended, and now they are getting extended by one more year to March 2022. So largely these are the kind of things. Faceless, of course, has been given a lot more emphasis, because what was earlier faceless assessment now has gone over to improved to become faceless appeals too. And that system, I know some members did say, can it not be with at least one-to-one interaction? Nothing stops the interaction, but if the Supreme Court, for instance, with due respect, can hold their hearings via video conference, it only reduces the burden on the assessee if he can sort the matters out even via VC. So it is not as if emails are sent, emails are received, they're so totally a faceless affair. It's not that. They can even have a video conference with whoever is allotted to deal with their case. So it's a better efficient use of time, efficient use of technology, cost reduction, and so on. And more than 90,000 assessments have been concluded, orders have been issued. So there is an acceptance even among those assessees who wanted the system, and now they find that it is actually bringing a certain level of comfort. So I'll now quickly get into responding to some of the issues by members. I'm not going in any particular order, first speaker, second speaker, and so on, but still, the first speaker was Sri Dipender Hudaji, who did speak about, capital expenditure, but you've not done much for demand side and so on. I've said this before once or twice, but the fact remains that when money is spent on infrastructure, it has immediate impact on job creation. And when job creation happens, money goes into the hands of people in the form of wages, and that actually is going to improve on the demand side. One, simplistically, like directly wage. but it also improves demand for core goods, whether it is steel, whether it is coal, whether it is cement and so on. There the demand goes through the core industries, the industries buy their raw material, even that's going to increase demand. Sum and substances, sir. Yes, when you learn theory, when you're taught economics, demand side is separate, supply side is separate. When you're studying and assessing, yes, demand side can be separated from supply side, but it's not so watertight a compartment. Resources do flow in and flow out. So when higher capital expenditure are undertaken, particularly by the government, it will have such multiplier effect that every aspect of the economy will have a positive bearing, and therefore we've chosen to go in this route. And it is not just an incremental addition. It is what was 4.12 lakh crores in the current year, the year which is ending now, has been increased to 5.54 lakh crores. So it is a huge increase in building social infrastructure and in building infrastructure such as roads, waterways, and so on. So I think these will have a bearing on demand also. But not to forget, because many members also voiced this point, that end of the day you have not taken care of Vanchit, Soshit, Peedit. I'm not sure if they want to say it after having seen what had happened during the lockdown, immediately after the lockdown, when the Prime Minister announced Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, where 80 crore people for 8 full months have been given free food grains. And one of our members also did speak that 40 crore people had money given directly into their accounts, just that within 24. I was monitoring it. And I will not lose an occasion to thank every one of the bank employees who undertook this exercise of making sure that the money announced went into the accounts of the beneficiaries. And many of them, in spite of the Jan Dhan Yojana, had to be accessed through bank mitras. Bank mitras went even during that peak lockdown time and put the money into the accounts of these people. So, Garib, Vanchit, Peedit, Soshit, we have absolutely, even during peak Corona times, sir. And in fact, I would say, whilst even today I have a very heavy heart when I talk about this, when we talk about migrant laborers, all of us knew that there was immense suffering and there's no denying it. Trains were arranged. I know the extent to which Piyush Goyalji was completely at it, and there are times when we had to request him saying, please, don't stress yourself out. All of us will have to work together with the states. He spent hours on end, nights, to coordinate with states to get the trains running for them so that they can go back to their respective villages. And even as they were going back, assessment was made as to how many districts are going to receive, how many number of migrants, and what kind of immediate employment opportunities can be given. That is why the Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, was raised from 64,000, which was my BE announcement, to more than 1 lakh crores. That's not a joke. Okay, you announced it. What happened after that? I've been monitoring it, and fully that amount. In fact, 2 months ago, when I looked at it, about 90,000 crores of that 1 lakh crore enhanced amount, which was given for Manrega, were utilized. And gradually, of course, the amount tapered down because people started getting back to various different cities and the jobs they were in earlier. So, Vanchit, Soshit, enough thought has been given. More can be given is a different argument, but nothing was given is not right. And again, sir, the Swanidhi scheme for street vendors, the direct transfer of cash for women Jan Dhan account holders, also money being given for Divyang, money being given for Kisan Samman Nidhi, which goes directly into the accounts. Nearly 10 crore now, 9 crore odd Kisan have received direct benefit transfer. Are these not taking care of the poor and also the dispossessed? So I just want to draw the attention of honorable members that we'll have to look back at what has happened. Now, if you permit me, sir, for a minute, I normally do not want to, I ideally do not want to, and normally don't try to get into, severe political replies, but I find it a bit heavy to listen, bit too rich to listen to opponents telling us, you're not managing the economy all right. You don't have an expertise. You're handling the economy so badly. Look at the golden word we left with you. Sir, let me just do a bit of a comparison. When my late predecessor, Shri Arun Jaitley, was the finance minister, he has referred quite often as to what he had inherited as an economy. India was one of the fragile five economies. And that was what he inherited. But what did he make of it? India became one of the fastest growing economies, and that is entirely to the credit of Honorable Shri Arun Jaitley ji and Manya Pradhan Mantri ji. He didn't leave it as a fragile fry. And today we are hearing, oh my God, look at how you're handling the economy. Particularly during a crisis. You created a crisis. Jaitley ji and Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji handled it to have the credit of becoming one of the fastest growing economies. Now, again, 2008 financial crisis, nothing in comparison to what we have today, Corona crisis. Nothing at all to compare. But even that financial crisis, where it was a global crisis, but it impacted India too. 2008 financial crisis, measures were taken, nobody's denying it. What was the result of the measures, sir? Many people are reminding me today, hey, be careful now. You remember 2008 crisis? There was something called taper tantrum. You probably will have to face that. Be careful. We are learning lessons. But it is a recognition that 2008 financial crisis being handled then by the government, UPA government, resulted in taper tantrum. You couldn't handle the taper tantrum. We are learning lessons out of it. You couldn't handle it, and also you couldn't handle the double-digit inflation, which was then the character of the economy at that time. Now, and not just now, between 2014 till today, economy's inflation has never crossed that emotional, barrier, sentimental barrier of 6% or beyond. We've never crossed it. Even today, the inflation rate is well below. And the recent statement of the Reserve Bank also says that. So, bit rich when I'm being told, oh, your handling of the economy. I'm learning lessons from what you left: fragile fry, double-digit inflation, taper tantrum. And then, sir, there was also this thing which was widely circulated: policy paralysis. There's no policy paralysis here now, in spite of COVID. Prime Minister, even during the Corona crisis, was engaged in more than 100 video conferences with countries abroad to learn from them and to also tell them what we are doing in this country. Corona vaccine has been handled. We are giving not only for Indian citizens but also for others. Economy, 5 mini budgets. I'm quite grateful that Honorable Member Scindia spoke about it in great detail. 5 mini budgets, and after that, this budget too. So we are handling the economy. And I'm glad we are handling the economy with consultation with people, industry, small, big. There were some honorable members who said, you're consulting only very big people but not others. Not at all. Yes, Mr. Gupta. No. Small industry, small trade, everybody, whoever wanted to have a consultation with us were welcomed. I have sat and had video conference with them. Prime Minister has spoken with them. We've received memorandum from them. All that has been made a part of all that announcement which came as Atmanirbhar Bharat. We don't serve one section and not serve the others. And above all, between 2014 and today, sir, one sharp distinction which we have to recognize and keep actually on the top of the table. All this is possible, and all this and more is possible only because we have Prime Minister has led a corruption-free government, which is the one big signature which we have to recognize. And therefore, when I hear from opposition parties on how to handle the economy, how to handle a crisis, I'm just astonished. Because I'll also quote two former governors of the Reserve Bank. Shri Raghuram Rajan mentioned, and I guess one of the members from this side did speak and quote this also. I quote, "A larger number of the bad loans originated in the period of 2006 to 8 is a remark made by Shri Raghuram Rajan. Too many loans were made to well-connected people, well-connected promoters who have a history of defaulting on their loans. Public sector bankers continued financing promoters even while private sector banks were getting out." That's the description of the state of affairs in public sector bank by a governor who was known to be well recognized to be an international economist scholar. These are his words. And therefore, this government under Prime Minister Modi had to take up very many ways of sorting this problem out. Asset quality review was held, and then very many steps were taken that government's comprehensive strategy, which had this recognition, resolution, recapitalization, and reforms, the 4 R's that we used. NPAs have since declined from NPAs have declined to 8,99,617 crore as of 2020, March 2020. So another governor, Urjit Patel, whose book is normally very often quoted saying, "Oh, Urjit Patel has said this." In his book, he says, and I quote, "Instead, about the public sector banks, instead they, the public sector banks, seem to have continued with extending further credit to poorly performing loan cases during the UPA period. This was done without commensurate enhancement of collateral. Borrowers seem to have proffered their name or personal network in the form of personal guarantees as substitute. Banking practice has been completely, like the way you say in Hindi, tod pod banking ka hua hai." At the end of the day, even a governor has commented like that. So I just want to underline the fact that things were a mess. The economy was mismanaged. And with that record, today, if I hear them speak and warn us, I'll still listen. I'll still learn lessons. But no, they don't have the credit of having managed the economy well. And just to give the data for comparison, 5-year period, sir, 2009 to 14, GDP growth was 6.7%. 2014 to 19, 7.5%. GVA manufacturing, 5 years period, again, 9 to 14, 6.4%. 14 to 19, 8.6%. CPI inflation, 2009 to 14, 10.3%. 14 to 19, 4.8%. Fiscal deficit to GDP, 5.35%, which is 2009 to 14, 3.65 in 14 to 19. Current account deficit, minus 3.34%. Now, 14 to 19, minus 1.43%. Forex reserves, and this is point to point, it can't be full 5 years, anything, any point to any point. 9 to 14, it was 264.1 to 303.6 billion dollars, whereas 14 to 19, it is 303.6 to 411.9 billion dollars. And the final figure, sir, FDI. More often I've been warned saying, oh, FDI will get affected. This is the kind of policy. FDI in billion US dollars, 179.7 in 2009 to 14, whereas 14 to 19, this rose to 268.5 billion US dollars. So on the economy, I would want people to kindly look at actual data before commenting. So there was this point also raised by Honorable Member Huda about downgrading by credit agencies. I just want to give you some actual observations. SEBI had stipulated that the CRAs, the credit rating agencies, may not consider delay in payment of interest or principal solely due to lockdown conditions as default events. So they've given very clearly saying you can't consider this to be default. Also during the moratorium period, they were advised not to consider any default. So the threat of being downgraded was taken care of. That shouldn't worry anybody. Further, earlier there was a stipulation that once downgraded, then 365 days have to elapse before restoring the rating. Now CRAs will have to restore it in 90 days itself instead of 365 days in case of default, which is made good. So actually, through the SEBI, there is an approach, very humane approach for businesses to survive and not to be downgraded for 1 year or 1.5 years. The coming back is also quick because it should happen within 90 days. About India's ratings, sir. India enjoys an investment grade rating, and we are not foreseeing any change or any chance of any downgrade due to us incurring higher deficits, because I've announced quite a big borrowing and also spending. Fitch has actually just recently upgraded our growth projections. Many of the economists, international bodies, and also rating agencies across the globe are of the firm opinion that governments need to spend to put the economies back. So globally, that's the advisory that everybody is receiving, and we are also following it, so it shouldn't hurt our rating. So I think I have broadly spoken about the cess already, but specifically, Honorable Member Rajiv Satak spoke about cesses and their utilization pointed out in the CAG's report. So expenditure which is allocated to sectors are generally higher than the cess collection. So, for example, in the BE of 21-22, an amount of 42,934 crore is estimated to be collected, whereas an amount of 1.67 lakh crore has been allocated in the BE of 21-22 for the ministry's health and education. So cess is one amount, far higher amount is being allotted to those very two categories under which the cess is being collected, so there is no mismatch there. Again, there was this concern by Honorable Member Rajiv Satak that Securities Contract Regulation Act and SEBI have been made a part of the finance bill. Why is it as a part of the finance bill? Part of also what Jairam Rameshji also had said. Why will the Securities Contract Regulation Act be a part of this finance bill? Sir, pooled investment vehicles such as the REITs and InvITs, which are business trusts, are instruments which channelize fund flow, including those from the capital markets, into infrastructure and also into real estate. These instruments, the rates and InvITs, have been given tax exemptions, and they will also be used for monetizing public assets and for generating revenues for the government. So, government is also, in some cases, of course, in some cases, major player in the alternate investment funds, having set up many such funds. And one example is the NIIF, the National Infrastructure Investment Fund, which provides for equity and debt support. It is therefore necessary for having it in the finance bill. So I did mention about the video conferencing facility as opposed to faceless, very much in line with what the Supreme Court is doing. Vijay Sai Reddy Garu had mentioned about it. I think that answers his concern. But more importantly, he was very passionate about speaking on the GST on Tirupati Tirumala Devasthanam. Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam. Sir, I want to make it clear that that's not something which has happened after the GST regime came in. Services provided for considerations are liable to GST. What prevails today? Any service which is provided by way of accommodation, where the rent for a day is more than 1,000 rupees, they attract GST. But this is not unique to only one particular institution, or be it a temple. This GST applies to everywhere where accommodation are provided and where the rental value is more than 1,000 a night. So cheaper accommodation are exempt. And I also would like to mention that this is pre-GST tax, which was a service tax which was applied then on hotel rooms and accommodations, which got carried into the GST. GST Council has discussed it several times and felt that this levy on room renting should continue, particularly for those above 1,000 rupees. So that's not unique to GST. And also some point which his party's honorable member in Lok Sabha raised, which is also a point which many members of parliament coming from southern states most often raise, is are southern states being punished by the finance commissions for their efficiencies? They take the example normally of the way in which population control has been managed. I want to assure Vijay Sai Reddy Garu, I did the same thing with his party's member in Lok Sabha, to incentivize states who have enforced population control measures. The 15th Finance Commission has provided a weightage of 12.5% for demographic performance. As per this criteria, states with lower fertility rate will get greater inter-se share. Andhra Pradesh has a inter-se share of 6.635% in the demographic performance. Criteria compared to overall inter-se share of 4.047%, it may be mentioned that in the 14th Finance Commission period, overall share was 4.305%. Therefore, the Finance Commission has already provided for a weightage of 12.5% for demographic performance, and under this criteria, AP actually gets a higher share because the subcomponent for AP is at 6.635%. Sir, Shri Amar Patnaik ji had raised quite a few things, issues related to the 75 years for the senior citizens. I made it very plain. I'm not talking about tax waiver. I was certainly talking about ease of doing business for elder citizens. That was not hidden. There were no small prints. It's a different thing that you may want me to consider even tax waiver for 75 years or senior citizens above that. But in the budget, that wasn't any small printed line. It was very clear, and I read it out very clearly. So, sir, and then the 2.5 lakh and 5 lakh applicable to government employees. I think that's been explained earlier. I'll explain it even now. It constitutes only 1% of population who pay more than 2.5 and get an assured return at 8% or above, and also tax concession. We didn't think it was right. This was clearly something which was for the employers, and we need to attend to them. So, GST compensation issues. I wouldn't want to elaborate too much on it because it is all clear and out in the public, but since many members raised it, I would want to say GST compensation. One thing to talk about GST compensation pertaining to the year 2020-21, and another which I heard much to my consternation, compensation related issues prior to 2020. I've stood up and answered in the council, and the council has definitely heard it. I've said it in this house also. I wouldn't mind repeating. And on this, I want to appeal to all members, let there not be any apprehensions. The GST compensation had already been paid to states and UTs for the year, completely at that, for the year 2017-18. There's nothing pending from that year. So is the case for the year 2018-19. Nothing pending for that year. Everything has been cleared. And for the year 2019-20, as per the GST Compensation Act 2017. So first, let's get it clear. Prior to COVID year, every compensation which is due for all the states has been cleared. If there has been something, at that time you did this, at that time you did that, every correction in the course has been done, reported to the council, states have received the monies, and there's nothing pending there. Again, to re-emphasize this point, the unutilized compensation of that year, 2017-18, and for the year 2018-19, has been promptly carried forward and utilized in the year 2019-20 and for 2021. So there is nothing unutilized which is remaining as though locked up in the Consolidated Fund of India. Nothing at all. Clean account. And the GST compensation for the year, the COVID affected year, 2020 to 2021, January 2021, I'm not talking about February and March. 2,17,844 is the compensation due from April 2020 to January 21. Back-to-back loan, which was agreed upon in the council after very elongated discussions, back-to-back loans released to states to meet the compensation shortfall, totals to 1,10,208. Also, every Monday it was released in installments. So, compensation to be released from compensation fund, and that will happen in March, this month, in another few days, is 30,000 crore. It will go to the states. Therefore, compensation likely due to states and union territories in the year 2020-21 is 77,636 crores. This is the overall for all states. And because, like in Lok Sabha, several members felt Maharashtra has a lot of due. So there is no discretion in GST. There are formula. And as for formula, it goes every month. So the formula tells me how much is pending for each of the states. And it is based on the formula each of the states. Yes, I've already told you 77,636 is what is going to be due end of this month. So there is nothing exceptionally being held back for Maharashtra. Provisional figure, I'm telling you about compensation due for year 2020-21, April to January 21, 32,295, which many members say 30,000 you're sitting over. No. Of that, 11,977 crore has already been released for Maharashtra, like many other states which received their share. So nothing in particular is being held back for Maharashtra. I can't do anything for one state and something else for some other state. There is a prescribed format with which monies are dispersed for states. So on the GST, I want clarity so that members please do realize that there's nothing which happens beyond what the council has suggested to us. So member N.D. Gupta, Honorable Member N.D. Gupta ji had asked about company tax rates being very different because they've been reduced as a result of 2019 September decision, whereas partnership tax rates have not been reduced. So this is fairly an obvious argument which has been repeatedly posed, and I want to explain it for a minute. When the income of company is distributed to its shareholders, the shareholders have to pay the tax that arises out of dividend income, in addition to the tax that the company paid on the income itself, on its own income, the company's own income. However, when the partner in a partnership firm receives his money, particularly from his capital account in the partnership, it is not taxable. Hence, two tax rates cannot be compared at all. And then to compare and then say, if you can give that to companies, please can you give it to me, doesn't work. It's a different story. You want something for the partnership, we can talk about it. But because we've given it for company, give it to us, the treatment is very different for each. So I'm coming to the last few. Just one thing, Sri Neeraj Dangiji had raised an issue of customs duty on screws, nuts and bolts and everything else. Sir, I want to humbly submit that the tax raise on customs duty increase on these items was done on two principles. One, anything that is being produced in India, particularly by MSMEs, we have to encourage them, and we are fully capable of producing and supplying to the Indian markets. We don't need to import them. Therefore, we levied a tax on such items. Nuts, bolts, screws, toys, etc. All of which are being produced in India, in fact, meeting global standards. Second, over the decades, tax has been levied on these goods for various many reasons. They are not safeguarded properly. The safeguards are poor. Their quality is poor. They don't comply with many of the Indian standards. And when on these scores we are asking them to be stopped, today we cannot say, no, it's already irrespective of your quality, you can still come. That's a second. Third, using this occasion, I want to explain that everywhere where we have increased the duty, you would clearly see a pattern that have not increased duties on raw materials or on intermediary goods. Taxes have been raised only on those items which are final consumer products, which are available in India. And we cannot import these and then say Atmanirbhar, and therefore that step has been taken. Sir, Derek O'Brien had spoken about, the central schemes are now coming down, you're not really doing much on that. And on the cess, he said, where is the money going of the cess? I've explained the cess and the money going where has been explained for health and education. I've also said about the agriculture infrastructure development cess. The third point, of course, he spoke about Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, don't advertise. I'm not going into that. That seems to be just an observation. But on the central schemes, first of all, the 13th Finance Commission, till the end of 13th Finance Commission, the states and the center had 32 and 68 as their shares in the tax devolution. 32 went to states and 68 was with the center. 14th Finance Commission, after a lot of discussions, came up with, that was early 2014-15, they came up with this report which said states will now get 42, center will have only 58. At that time, the central government under Prime Minister Modi, because he's been a chief minister in the state, knows what the need of the states are, readily agreed to this 10% increase in the state share. 32 became 42. He readily agreed. He said, no, states ko dena chahiye, de do. In that report, one of the observations was that this increase is being made. From now, the centrally sponsored schemes and central schemes will have to be gradually rationalized. So, now suddenly to tell us, even as we've retained this 42 is to 58, meaning 41 now because of J&K, that proportion remains. And the logic, therefore, will also have to remain, that the central sponsored schemes and the central schemes will have to gradually get rationalized. We can't have a higher devolution to the states and also run equally that amount of that many number of central schemes and centrally sponsored schemes. So let's understand it was a recommendation of the 14th Finance Commission which increased the devolution to the states to 42 from what it was earlier 32. So let's not be worried on that score. There's nothing that the center is doing on its own. It's a recommendation by the previous Finance Commission. But at the same time, Member O'Brien also said West Bengal and the money which is getting devolved. It is estimated that 2020-21, Bengal will get 41,363.45 crores. In the BE of 2021-22, which is now to commence from 1st April, it is estimated that West Bengal will receive 50,070.29 crore. 41 say, today it's gone to 50,070.29 crores. There is an increase from 41 to 50. State devolution is based on the tax collections, and any change in the tax collection can lead to a change in tax devolution. So that has to be kept in mind. So I learn a lot from quite a lot of members. I've had also a lot of friendly banter with Honorable Member Dola Sen. And if the House will indulge in me, if I try speaking a bit of Bengali. Please, Honorable Deputy Chairman, sir, please do not mind me. I'll try, and I'm sure it's not going to be perfect. Well, she spoke in Bengali. I'm trying to give a reply in the same language. I try sometimes in Tamil, in Telugu, in Malayalam. I do, and I like to do it in Bengali too. Sir, Dola, I've not said Mrs. Miss Dola Sen, Banglate Baktavya Rekechen. Ami Banglate Unake reply Dite Chai. Kendra Sarkar Banglarer Garib Kisan Der ke 10,000 koti taka dite. Dite chai, kintu Rajya Sarkar dite diche na. And she used the word laja, laza, what was the pronunciation? Saying shame. I just want to observe. Eta ki tik laza. Again, Kendra Sarkar Banglarer Garib Manuser Chikitsa Jano Ayushman Bharat Lagu Karte Chai Kintu Rajya Sarkar Karte Diche Na. Garib Manus there. Garib Manus there. Eta ki tik.
Please.
Garib Manus de Eta ki tik lazza. Third, sir. No problem.
Please.
Dola Sen can say what they have as a better scheme. You may have. You may have. You may give 1 lakh per. No, please.
Please, आपस में
But
बात
sir,
करें।
if they are giving, let us say, 10 crores, what is the problem if Modi gives 1 more crore? You add it, na? Arey, we have a better scheme. I don't want yours. ये क्या तरीका हुई? ये क्या तरीका हुई? So third point. Third point, sir.
प्लीज आपस में बैठकर बात करें। प्लीज बैठ करके आपस में बात ना करें। प्लीज
It's okay.
प्लीज आपस में बात ना करें। कोई चीज रिकॉर्ड पे नहीं जा रही। माननीय मंत्री जी का बयान। प्लीज
Listen.
प्लीज
Listen to this. Listen to this.
प्लीज
Listen to this.
माननीय मंत्री जी प्लीज
Sir, whether it is health, whether it is the farmer, whether it's the garib person from Bengal, केंद्र सरकार जा दिते छे से अपना refuse करते तक बैन, किंतु कंप्लेन करते तक बैन कि केंद्र सरकार बांग्ला के खिचुन दी छे ना, which is not right. बार complaint that central government is not giving anything is wrong.
Please take your seats. Please.
Sir,
Please. Please, madam, please. Please, आपस में बैठ के बात।
I'm glad to hear. Sir, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad. Dolaji Bosun.
Please,
Sir.
please.
Sir,
Please conclude.
actually,
Please. Please.
sir, if there is that anxiety, I would have given my answer to Vijay Sai Reddy Garu in Telugu. TTD Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam paina pettina tax ఒక్క తిరుమల తిరుపతి దేవస్థానంకు మాత్రం కాదు, GST కి ముందు నుంచే ఉంది. Here na, you wanted me to say in other language, I'm saying this is now.
Please.
Sir, there is no election.
Please.
Sir, I will say that.
Honorable Minister, please conclude.
Sir,
Please conclude.
Honorable Chairperson, sir, I just want to tell that I'm glad to hear from Ms. Dola Sen that they never refused. I want to submit that when my budget speech was given on 1st February, when members asked me why I brought down 10,000 crore of allocation for agriculture, I had to explain. If they didn't refuse, it's good news for me. But because by the time budget was to be presented, the farmers' list hadn't come to the central government. Was that acceptance?
Please conclude.
So,
Honorable Minister, please conclude.
So, I think, sir,
Please.
so therefore,
Please.
sir, if the list had come,
Please conclude.
sir, I'm talking to you. If the list had come, Bengal's poor Kisan would have received that money which is for PM Kisan Samman Nidhi. It hadn't come, it wasn't given to the farmers. Sir, All right, it's all right.
Conclude. Please.
Sir, Manya member.
Please.
Sir, about the petrol tax, sir.
Please.
About the petrol and diesel taxation. I'm sorry, I object. Sir, I object. I don't utter a word of untruth. Jhoot ka shabd upyog na kare.
Please.
I don't utter a word of untruth in this house.
It will be
I'm sorry. You have to apologize and
Please.
withdraw that
It will
word.
be examined. Please.
No.
Let's see.
How dare, sir? I don't utter a word of untruth in this house.
It will be
I don't
examined,
say
madam,
truth.
please.
You better apologize. You
Please.
better apologize.
Please.
Sir,
Honorable Minister, please conclude. Please
Maharashtra.
conclude.
Sir, honorable member,
Please conclude.
honorable member, Ms. Chaturvedi
Please
from
conclude.
Maharashtra had spoken about the petrol and diesel, sir. And I have mentioned that on petrol and diesel, sir. Sir, honorable
Please.
speaker, sir, Deputy Chairman, sir, I want you to please request the House to be in order. I wish the opposition members have the patience to listen to reply, and if they have a problem, after I finish, they may say what they want to say. Whereas, when they kept preaching to us, I had the patience to listen to what they said,
Please
even though
conclude,
it was in
madam. Please
Bengali.
conclude.
Even though it was in Bengali,
Please conclude.
I heard them out. They were putting all false allegations against us, and that's absolutely unacceptable. No way. No way.
Please.
Sir, बंगाल में किसान का हक मारा गया. बंगाल में किसान का हक मारा गया. Sir, Member Priyanka Chaturvedi. Honorable Member Priyanka Chaturvedi spoke about the petrol and diesel.
Please. बैठिए. हमें उनको बताओ. Please.
Sir,
Please बैठिए.
petrol and diesel.
Please. बैठिए.
Petrol and diesel.
Please conclude.
Taxation.
Please conclude.
Member Priyanka Chaturvedi spoke about it. I just want to highlight the fact that
बैठिए.